I live in North Carolina, and I had not heard about Kanakuk until my daughter had sent her son here. And the way she heard about Kanakuk was through a good friend of hers. My daughter was living in San Diego, and she and her husband were friends with another Marine Corps couple. My son-in-law Carl and Daniel were friends, and my daughter Bethany and Jen were friends. My daughter's husband and the other husband were pilots of the same unit, and right after 9/11, they were one of the first units out of the United States. Before the end of September, they had deployed to Afghanistan, and right after Christmas, Daniel's plane went down. Daniel and Jen were newlyweds, and they had found out right before they left for Afghanistan that Jen was pregnant. So this was doubly devastating for them. Fast forward a few years, Bethany and Jen remained friends, and Jen was going to Liberty to get her master's degree in counseling. Most of that was online, but she had to spend a weekend or a week in Lynchburg taking some classes, and she was sitting in the little waiting room in the Lynchburg airport, and she's sitting there waiting for her plane, and this man who's about my age sits down beside her and says, "Tell me about yourself." And she says, "Well, I'm a war widow, and I'm raising my son by myself, and I'm here to take some classes and get my degree in counseling. And I have a little 3-year-old boy. He lost his father in Afghanistan right after 9/11. And they talked a little longer, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I run some camps out in Missouri. Here's my card. We'd like to scholarship him to come to camp when he's old enough. So I want you to call me when he's 6 or 7, and we'll make sure he can come to camp without any costs." So when Daniel Jr. was 6 or 7, she called him. It was Joe White. And she sent Daniel to Gay Country for a week. And when he finished his week, she came and picked him up. And the first thing she did was call my daughter. She said, "Bethany, Daniel just had the best week of his life at this camp in Missouri. You have got to send Isaac," who was my daughter's firstborn. And Isaac and Daniel were just a few months apart. And so the next year, they came together. Isaac and Daniel came back to Gay Country. Well, a few years later, I was talking to Joe about my introduction to Kanakuk for the first time, and he asked me how my daughter's friend Jen was doing, and he asked me to get back with her. Her name was Jen, and I did write to her, and she said, just like I mentioned earlier about Isaac, my grandson, about how much Kanakuk has meant to young Daniel in his development into a young man, about character and his growth as a young man. So again, this camp means so much to these young men and women in their character development.